Some of you know and some of you don't know, but every so often we send some of our amazing up-and-coming community leaders to Israel on a program run by the Progressive movement called the Butel program. And once upon a time we said that the leaders of our future are the youth. That's wrong. The leaders of today are our youth. And I'd like to invite Beck Szabo, who's just come back from Butel, who is a Netzer Madricha, to let you know a little bit about what she experienced just this February in Israel.
Attending the Butel seminar was a truly unique educational experience that broadened my understanding of the nuances and challenges that exist in Israeli society. One of my favourite parts of participating in the Butel seminar was the amazing platform it provided to make global connections in the progressive Jewish world. Our session with Rabbi Noah Satath, the director of the Israel Religious Action Center, also really stood out to me. We discussed progressive Judaism and Israeli democracy. With Noah, we were able to get into the nitty-gritty of the major issues preventing egalitarianism in Israeli society. I think that the Butel seminar really succeeded in bringing people together, people who otherwise would never have had the opportunity to meet. This is incredibly powerful.
The Israel Religious Action Center is the legal and public advocacy arm of the reform movement, and I've been working at IRAC for the past 15 years. And I want to give you today a taste of what we've been doing, and I'm going to give you examples of 4 issues we've been dealing with: equality for the reform movement in Israel, our fight for equality for LGBTQ, our fight against racism, and our struggle against exclusion of women and gender segregation in the public sphere. So starting with the reform movement, in Israel there is no separation between religion and state, and so the government funds heavily religious services, but when we're talking about Judaism, it goes almost exclusively to the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodoxy in Israel, and basically we have to fight in each case to get our equal share, what we deserve to get. Actually, Beck just mentioned Miri Gold. Miri Gold was actually a case I brought to the Israeli Supreme Court, and this was the case that broke the Orthodox monopoly when we're talking about the state funding salaries of rabbis. So since that case, in 2012, the state has begun to pay the salaries of our rabbis, and not only Orthodox rabbis. The same goes for synagogue buildings that the state has begun, after a long legal fight of Iraq, begun to fund some synagogue buildings, reform synagogues around the country. I want to just give you an example of the issue of the Western Wall. Probably some of you have heard that we had quite an experience at the Western Wall 10 days ago at the beginning of Adar Bet, the Jewish month of Adar Bet. 10 days ago, Women of the Wall have marked their 30th anniversary. They have been praying at the wall every Rosh Chodesh for the past 30 years. I've been going to the monthly prayers for the past 2.5 years. I represent both the reform movement and Women of the Wall in petitions before the court where we demand to implement the Kotel agreement that the government approved and then retracted from it. And I also represent Women of the Wall in a petition against the police for failing to protect the women when they come and pray every month at the Kotel. And really this last Friday, 10 days ago, was sort of the most difficult experience I've experienced at the wall. There were many people coming in support of Women of the Wall, but there were many people who were bused, especially school children, especially girls, who were bused to the wall by ultra-Orthodox organizations just in order to prevent Women of the Wall from conducting the prayer. We've had a lot of violence. You can see here those of the girls. It was very crowded, the women's section. You really, literally didn't have a place to stand. We were all squeezed to each other. People were pushed around. You can see here a lot of violence going on. So you can see some people, women from Women of the Wall. You can see here Leslie Zaks on the side. She's actually going to be here, I understand, 2 weeks in around 2 weeks. It was a lot of violence going on. We spoke to the police before the prayer, during the prayer, really nothing. They did nothing. They just stood aside and didn't protect us. You can see here, that's me in the red coat talking to a representative of the Justice Ministry who was there, who was present, and I was begging him, go and tell the police to help us. He did what he could, but basically the police just didn't do anything. And it was very frustrating. Prior to this prayer, there were campaigns which were launched by ultra-Orthodox organizations, which are against women of the wall, against the reform movement. And they, you can see here some of the billboards that they published. Up above the huge billboard around Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, you can see it says, a reform grandfather equals assimilated father equals a Gentile son. And the other ones are reform at the Kotel, that's not normal. The amazing thing was that after the whole thing happened, they said that actually we were the violent ones. So they opened a hotline saying, were you hurt by reform violence, call us, assumingly trying to collect evidence of people who were hurt. And of course it was the other way around. We are subject to an extreme incitement against the reform movement by different organizations. And on the one hand, it's worrisome, it's very troubling. On the other hand, I think it shows that we pose a real threat to Orthodox and especially ultra-Orthodox organizations. The fact is that it means that we are much stronger and a force that no one can ignore anymore in Israel. According to a recent survey, around 500,000 Israelis identified themselves as reform. We're talking about 8% of adult population. That's a huge rise from previous surveys. And so it's very clear that we are a real alternative to the Israeli public. More and more people come and have weddings through with reform rabbis, have their bar or bat mitzvah of their kids. With our movement, come and celebrate the holidays with us. And it's really, we can see that it poses a threat because we really show that there is more than one way to be Jewish. We can show that there is a lot more religious pluralism in Israel, many more alternatives for people to choose from, and that's, I think, is a very good news. Okay, now I have to put on the video. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention on the issue of the reform movement. As you know, marriages and divorce in Israel have to be performed through the chief rabbinate. Marriages through the reform movement are not recognized in Israel, so people who marry through us and do not go abroad to have civil marriages are not considered married couples. We are going to have, actually next week in Washington, D.C., a large event trying to raise awareness to the issue, and I wanted to show you a very short video of the couples that are going to get married there, 3 Israeli couples that cannot or would not be married in Israel.
כי הבעייתי. אמא שלי עברה גיור לחרשים ברומניה, אמא שלי נוצרי, אבא שלי יהודי, והם פשוט החליטו שזה לא תופס בארץ. כשהם עלו, הגישו את המסמכים, אבל מבחינתם זה לא תפס.
We can't. There is no recognizable entity that would acknowledge our marriage.
Both of us are Jewish by the halakha.
My grandparents are strict Orthodox. I wanted to take part in the ceremony. I wanted to give him a ring. I wanted to read him my vows. And also, very central for us was the ketubah, that we didn't want him to purchase me. We wanted it to be like equal and an agreement between us.
This event that is being thrown for us is amazing.
I think doing that in Washington will have a few thousand people, hopefully, attend a reform wedding.
להפיץ את המסר שיש יהדות שיותר עדכנית עם הזמנים.
There are so many people that we would have wished to come to our wedding in Israel and they couldn't.
The fact that we're going to do it by ourselves, most of our family is not going to be there.
I wish that in the state that I love so much that I could just get married.
שיבואו לשמוח איתנו, אני מאוד נשמח לראות אותם.
Speechless.
We invite you to our wedding at the Washington Hebrew Congregation.
this is Judaism in its best.
So as I said, those couples who do not marry in Israel are not recognized as married couples. Since it is very hard to change it legally, what we're doing meanwhile is to make sure that couples who are not registered as married in Israel enjoy the same rights as other couples. One of the areas where there is a difference is on the issues of adopting a baby. In Israel, up until recently, only heterosexual married couples would be eligible to adopt a baby in Israel. We filed a petition in this regard, and in response, the state said, okay, as to heterosexuals, non-married couples, we're going to change the practice, and they're going to enjoy the same rights as married couples. But when we're talking about gay and lesbian couples, they are sort of abnormal families, so we cannot allow themselves to adopt babies. This is actually what they said when they submitted the response to the Supreme Court. This caused huge public outcry. You can see here just one of the demonstrations. Tens of thousands of Israelis went out to the street, and this caused the government to change its mind. They said, okay, we're taking back everything we said, and we are going to change the law in order to allow, again, lesbian couples also to adopt. So it was very happy result. Another example I wanted to give you about the issue of LGBT rights is the story of the guy at the left. On the right, it's me. If you don't recognize me, it's one of the pride parades in Jerusalem. On the left, this is a guy called Sammy Cantor. He's a Reform rabbinical student from the US, and he spent his first years of studies in Jerusalem. He arrived in Israel this past summer, participated in the Pride Parade, and a day after the Pride Parade, he went to downtown Jerusalem to grab a pizza with his friends. He entered the pizza and he was wearing a pride shirt. So the guy at the pizzeria asked him, "Are you gay?" And when he said he is, he told him, "Get out." So he was not willing to serve him just because he was gay. Sammy was shocked. He came to us and we helped him file a civil suit for damages because under Israeli law, any place open to the public, offering services to the public, has to do so without discrimination, okay, on the basis of race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, whatever. So we filed the suit and we won. Just a couple of weeks ago, he was awarded damages in the amount of 16,000 shekels, and it really made him, he said he now felt that he truly belonged to Israel, and it was a very heartwarming thing he said to us. Okay, moving back to the issue of racism. We have been fighting racism, racial incitement, especially incitement which is based on Jewish resources, for over 15 years. We go against people who use Judaism to incite hatred, violence, racism. And the very last thing we dealt with is the issue of the Jewish Power Party. You've probably heard about two followers of Meir Kahana who have been trying to get elected to the Knesset. You can see them on the right. It's Michael Ben-Ari. The other one is Itamar Ben-Gvir. They have stickers saying Kahana was right. And they have been basically saying the same radical and racial views that Kahana used to say. You can see here a few examples. That's one of the ads. The only way to take the enemy out of the Knesset is to vote Jewish power. And you can see here all the Arabs members of the Knesset. That's another quote of Ben-Ari. We have to change the equation regarding anyone who dares to speak against a Jew. Such a person is a dead man. He must not come out alive. No expelling, no stripping of his citizenship. He does not live. A firing squad takes him out as the Arabs understands best. So he keeps saying that all Arabs are enemies. No one of them is loyal to the state. All of them should be kicked out of the country. We decided to rely on a clause, on a law that was changed after Kahana was in the Knesset, a law which allows a court to disqualify a candidate if he incites to racism in extreme circumstances. This law was used to disqualify Kahana twice, but it has never been used since. So what we did is we filed a request to the Central Election Committee. You can see here me on the right, just arguing the case. It was 10 days ago or so. This is a political body, so although we brought a lot of evidence showing a lot of racist and very harsh expressions and remarks by those two guys, the committee did not accept our request, so we went along and filed an appeal to the Supreme Court of Israel. The court heard the case just last Thursday before an extended panel of 9 justices of the Supreme Court. This is very rare. Unfortunately, I missed it because I was here. And just yesterday, the court, this is just a few headlines from the papers today, BBC, Washington Post, Ynet, Times of Israel. The court just yesterday decided to accept our appeal, and for the first time since 1992 to disqualify a candidate which incites to racism. So this was indeed an amazing breakthrough. We feel it is a case where the Supreme Court draws a very clear red line, stating that racism is not tolerated and racism has no place in Israel's parliament. I can tell you that we really worked on it very, very, very hard. The court in previous cases said you have to bring a lot of evidence, and we brought over 40 videos and Facebook posts of these guys where you can hear them say all these horrible things, and really, we didn't leave a chance. You know, the court had to accept our appeal because it was really so well grounded, you know, by the facts. So we were very happy that the court indeed accepted our appeal. Okay, another thing we do on the issue of racism, the last thing before I move to the last subject. A year and a half ago, we opened a Racism Crisis Center. We want to be an address for anyone who has been discriminated against on the basis of his race, and we have received many complaints since and also filed a few civil suits, and I want to show you a very short video that we launched when we started the...
סביר להניח שהבוקר שלי התחיל דומה לשלכם. שעון מעורר, תחצוח שיניים, קפה, פקקים, עד כאן, הכל סטנדרט.
אבל אז אני אקבל הודעת וואטסאפ קטנה, ומכאן הבוקר שלי והבוקר שלכם נפרדים. שלום למיס, את באמת נראית לי אחלה בחורה. לי זה ממש לא מפריע להזכיר לך את הדירה. אבל השכנים קצת התנגדו. אני בטוח שאת מבינה. בצהריים, אני, ואם לא אני, אז ערבייה אחרת, ואם לא ערבייה אחרת, אז אתיופית.
ואם לא אתיופית, אז רוסיה. נקבל טלפון ממישהו מאוד מנומס, והוא יגיד לי, תראי, מאוד התרשמנו ממך ברעיון, אבל ספציפית לעבודה הזו אנחנו מחפשים מישהי עם לוק קצת יותר ייצוגי. בין לבין אני, ואם לא אני, אז אתיופי אחר, ואם לא אתיופי, אז מזרחי.
ואם לא מזרחי, אז רוסי, או ערבי, או פליט. יתקל בשוטר ברחוב, שבדיוק יחליט שהכי דחוף לו, זה לעיין לנו רגע בתעודת זהות. סתם, כי עוררנו חשד סביר.
אחר הצהריים מישהו מאיתנו ילך למשרד הדתות להוציא היתר הנישואים. והפקיד יגיד לך ככה באגביות, תגיד, אתה בטוח שאתה יהודי? בערב מישהו מאיתנו לא ייכנס למועדון. כי למרות שבאיבנט כתוב שהכניסה לכולם, כשנגיע פתאום מישהו מחליט שהכניסה למוזמנים בלבד.
וככה זה מתנהל.
כל יום סיפור קטן אחר.
אבל זה לא חייב להיות ככה.
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 הגיע הזמן להיאבק בגזענות ובגזענים.
המרכז לנפגעי גזענות.
So we have filed a few civil suits on behalf of people who were discriminated against. For instance, a woman who wanted to take the train to where she lives. She wanted to take the train from Beersheba. The policewoman asked her to show an identification card. She didn't have one in the bag, and so, it was a security officer, and so they called the police. When the police came, she did find a passport in her bag, which she forgot she had, but then the police told her, that's it, you can't go on the train. Why? That's what we feel like, because, you know, we don't want you to go there. So basically, she was refused service to go the train just because she's Arab, although she went through a security check and everything was okay. She was very humiliated, and we filed a suit on her behalf. And that's just one example of the cases we deal with in this crisis center. Okay, the last issue, fighting exclusion of women and gender segregation in the public sphere. This is a rather new phenomenon which started with a demand to segregate public buses in Israel. Around 20 years ago, the leaders of the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel asked the Ministry of Transportation to basically have gender-segregated buses. This means that men would board the bus from the front door and sit at the front of the bus, and women board from the back and sit at the back of the bus. Those buses were not marked in any special way, and so when a woman just, boarded a bus and sat behind the driver, either the driver would tell her, move to the back, it's not your place here, or the driver would tell her, you're not dressed modestly enough, so you cannot be here at all, or the passengers would harass her tremendously and saying, move to the back, very unpleasant experiences. We filed a petition to the Supreme Court, and the amazing thing was that we received phone calls from ultra-Orthodox women, anonymous phone calls, telling us, we thank God that there are reform in the world because you are fighting our fight. We cannot allow ourselves to go out public against this, but we feel humiliated to be sent to the back of the bus. And so it was clear that it not only disturbs me and other, progressive and secular Israelis, but also the ultra-Orthodox women themselves who are subject to this treatment, and it's very humiliating for them. The Supreme Court accepted our petition and said that basically this gender segregation is illegal. We helped a few women file against civil suit for damages against the drivers, against the bus companies, and it did change the behavior of the drivers. So drivers no longer send women to the back. Drivers, if women are harassed, they would help them, they would protect them, and it really made a difference. The segregation did not stop on buses. It occurred and still occurs, unfortunately, in cemeteries and funerals. Cemeteries in Israel are run by religious burial companies. You can see here one of the cemeteries in northern Israel in Atlit. So that's the part of the men, and the women should stand behind the wall. They were not actually part of the ceremony. Sometimes women were not allowed to eulogize their loved ones. We had really some heartbreaking stories, which we brought to court. And a few burial companies were forced to pay damages to the women who were humiliated. This still occurs in some places, and we still have some ongoing cases on the issue. There was even an attempt to have gender segregation on the streets. This is a street in Mea Shearim, in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood in Jerusalem. So really putting a mechitza in the middle of the street in Simchat HaShoeva during Sukkot a couple of years ago. All this happened and more, but 6 years ago, the Attorney General of Israel decided to discuss the issue and published a report on this matter. And basically the report said what we've been saying all along, saying that all of those practices of segregation are illegal because they hurt so much the rights of women for dignity and equality, and because they are not really required in order for the ultra-Orthodox to keep their own ways of life. As I told you, it's a relatively new phenomenon. So in a sense, it's an invented tradition. It is not something that is practiced anywhere else in the world, and it has not been practiced in Israel before 1997. So since then, we are working hand in hand with the Attorney General, specifically with the Deputy Attorney General who is in charge of the matter, and it's really very important. Another phenomenon we've been dealing with is the issue of modesty signs, which are hung in some ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and also in the city of Beit Shemesh, a city which is roughly half ultra-Orthodox. The other half is comprised of modern Orthodox and seculars. I should say that, of course, not all the ultra-Orthodox are radicals and favor those radical modesty demands, but the reality is that we usually just hear the radicals. Okay, so in Beit Shemesh, we're talking about a very, very small group of around 200 people, but they are the violent people who not only back the signs, but also use violence against women who they think are not dressed modestly enough. So they could spit on women, they could throw stones at them, and they set the tone for the city, even though most ultra-Orthodox are against it. So this is one sign that you could see, saying specifically what you should and shouldn't wear. There are other signs like this, saying women are asked to refrain from passing or staying. This is a sign which is next to the entrance of a synagogue and yeshiva in Beit Shemesh. That's another sign at the beginning of the staircase. So basically saying there is a part for men and a part for women. So we have represented an amazing group of brave modern Orthodox women who live in Beit Shemesh. It wasn't easy for them being represented by the Reform movement, but quickly we realized that we have to join forces for the moderates to act against the radicals. And they are really an amazing group of women. We have had some success in courts. Some of the signs were taken down, some of them were put up again. But the good news is that we just had a municipal elections in Israel and in the municipal elections in Bet Shemesh, the ultra-Orthodox mayor here on the right, who backed the signs, was kicked out of office, and the female mayor, a modern Orthodox female mayor, was elected, and it was truly a miracle. She was elected also by the votes of ultra-Orthodox, who were sick and tired of the incitement, of the hatred, of the really radical views of some of the ultra-Orthodox in Bet Shemesh, and so they voted for her. So it's really heartwarming to see that there's a new era in Bet Shemesh, and we're now, hopefully things are going to change. Okay, one more example, nearing to the end. A radio station in Israel called Kol Barama was licensed by the state, and it was defined as an ultra-Orthodox radio station. It started to broadcast in 2009, and it had a very interesting policy, okay? No women were allowed to be heard on the station. Not only women singing, but also women talking, okay? This is an invention. Nobody ever said that halachically there's a problem to hear a voice of a woman over the radio, but they decided so. All the presenters were men as well. We decided to file a class action suit. So we filed a very large suit for a large sum of money on behalf of all the ultra-Orthodox women who listened to the station and were excluded. They couldn't hear any women on the station. Following our class action suit, the situation has changed. The station started to allow women to be heard on its broadcast, and even you see there is a female presenter. I think there are even two, but we see here only one. Our class action was accepted by the court, and the station was ordered just a couple of months ago to pay 1 million shekels in damages. The damages would go to programs for empowerment of ultra-Orthodox women. So that was a very interesting success. And the last thing on the issue of exclusion of women, segregation on flights. I don't know if any of you have witnessed such an incident where ultra-Orthodox passengers on planes refuse to sit next to women and call the flight attendants, and the flight attendants say to the woman, okay, you have to move because he's not willing to sit next to you. We've heard a lot of testimonies in this regard. This is a campaign we put on in the States. And finally, we filed a civil suit for damages on behalf of a woman named Renee Rabinovich. And that's the last video I want to show you today.
Ah, yes, flights. Crying babies, amorphic sludge that's supposed to be food, and the latest hit, gender discrimination. Yes, in the last couple of years, there's a growing trend of Haredi men who simply refuse to sit next to women on planes. The Haredi demands that the female passenger will move or else he won't sit down. Instead of telling the man to sit down, the woman is dealt with severe peer pressure by fellow passengers and the flight attendants until she gives up and moves from her seat. Yeah. Seriously, when Renee Rabinovich, an 80-year-old Holocaust survivor, was asked to move after an ultra-Orthodox man refused to sit next to her, she decided to reach these folks, sue the airline, and like the boss she is, won. And to the people who are now saying, but he's religious, it's his faith. So yeah, it is his religion. But religion cannot be an excuse for discrimination. We wouldn't respect that if someone refused to sit next to someone because of the color of their skin, right? We have to stop gender segregation on sidewalks, on buses, and on airplanes. No one is allowed to tell you where to sit based on your gender. If you come across such an infuriating demand, contact the Israeli Religious Action Center by clicking the link in the description, and they'll make sure you get the support you deserve. Let's create a safe and welcoming environment for everyone so that we could all have I'm not gonna say a great flight because that doesn't exist, but a reasonable, a somewhat nice, pleasant time on a plane. Seems about right.
So we won this suit, and El Al, it was a suit against El Al, so El Al was obliged to pay damages to Renee Rabinovich and also to instruct all of its flight attendants that this is illegal. You have on the tables a little Rights on Flights brochure that we published. No, not this, actually, this one. That's another one. So it really explains that this is illegal for any one of you going on planes. Okay, so just to end with some, I don't know, sad or funny, depends how you look at it, censoring of images of women. Those are bills, new bills, which have images of Israeli female poets on them. So some people mark them off. We see also a lot of vandalizing of images of women on billboards. But what we also see is that the companies censor themselves. So you see here that's Israeli model on the right, that's in Tel Aviv, and in Jerusalem you can see her head was cut off because she couldn't be seen like that. The animated salt lady is probably too immodest, so she doesn't appear in some ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods. This is on the left. This is a very famous Israeli comedian. Look what happens to her in Bnei Brak. That's an ad for a one of the health clinic in Israel. So it says, you can see the dad and his kids. Being a mother is to encourage your family to think about everything. Okay, I don't know where the mother is. She's probably cooking or something. Do you see Smurfette to the left? So look what happened to her in Bnei Brak. Oh, she's gone. Where is she? We're looking for her. Yeah. So even a Smurfette is too immodest. IKEA publishes a catalog in Israel like IKEA does everywhere else. But 2 years ago, the company decided to publish a special catalog for the ultra-Orthodox population. The catalog, the special thing about it, that there were no images of women or girls. So you see here, that's the dad and his kids in the living room. That's the dad and his kids in the kitchen. And even in the closet, it says actually a closet for everyone, but you see only male clothes. We actually just filed another class action suit against IKEA just 2 weeks ago for this blatant exclusion of women. The Brave Women of Bet Shemesh, which I've mentioned before, had this amazing initiative. They were sick and tired of the fact that they don't see women on billboards in their city, so they went to a print shop, and every week they printed a woman and just went and put it on different billboards. So the first one was Wonder Woman, and they just put it before Shabbat, so I thought it was really great. So just to conclude my talk, our struggles are not very easy. They're very Sisyphean, they're very long, and we really can do it through the generous support of people like you. The fact that I'm here and hearing people that support us so much gives us a lot of energy to continue. We want to continue doing all this meaningful work in order to turn our beloved state of Israel to a more just and pluralistic place, and we'll be happy to continue to do so with your support. Thank you.
Why do we come together on an evening like this? Because we have a role to play in supporting Orly's work. Israel is the living embodiment of self-determination for the Jewish people. And making Israel a home for all Jews, regardless of background or religious affiliation, is a major challenge. As you would have seen, if you happen to be a Jew from Ethiopia or Russia, just renting a home is difficult. 2 years ago, like Beck, I was on the Butel program, and our first Friday was a little different. We were taken not to Machne Yehuda, but to the market in Ramleh, which is a mixed Jewish and Arab town. We went into the shuk. We marvelled at the beautiful fruit and vegetables. It was busy with shoppers making their homes beautiful for Shabbat, but that's not all. It was busy with shoppers buying typical Arab treats for the merry Arab homes in the town. And as we walked through the market, suddenly the sound of music enveloped us. We turned the corner, and we discovered a band made up of both Jewish and Arab musicians singing songs from both cultures, and a mixed crowd was singing and dancing along in the middle of their shopping on a Friday. So one has to remember that Israel has 1.6 million Arab citizens. They make up 22% of the population. Most are Muslim, some are Christian, some are Druze, some are Bedouin, and yes, they are as divided as we are. But seeing in that market Jews and Arabs of various cultures shopping together, singing together, dancing together, was the picture of an Israel that truly lives up to the Declaration of Independence. And that's the Israel that we in the UIA Progressive Appeal and the Your Union for Progressive Judaism support. And that's one of the reasons we asked Orly to come out to meet with our community. Thanks to the work of Iraq, led so beautifully by Orly, change is happening. IKEA have backed off their catalogue that is men only. No longer can a bus driver require a woman to enter and leave a bus by the back door or sit at the back, allowing men to sit at the front. No longer can an insensitive interior ministry deny citizenship and residency to Jewish families And I'd just like to read you an extract from a letter written to Nikki Maor, who many of you know is a graduate of Netzer and made Aliyah from North Shore Temple Emanuel. And she works at LACO, which is one of the entities we support with our dollars. And this is a letter the Yemeni family sent to her, which she shared with me earlier this year. We turned to you on the day we received our son's expulsion order, with the notice that within 14 days he would be thrown out of Israel under the claim that his living in Israel was not legal. That day, my stomach cramped, my hope disappeared, my smile was erased, and my sadness and tears didn't stop for an instant. You took on the project and immediately sent out documents and letters to the courts and Ministry of Interior. You fought like a lioness until a long-awaited day arrived. Thank you for the days and hours that your hand did not rest, and your persistence in sending out even more letters and more clarifications. Thank you, dear and unique woman, we are so grateful. May you continue to succeed to bring about change and justice in the world. So no longer can the Interior Ministry deny a Jewish family their Jewishness, because our movement stands there to support them. Young people, immigrants, Jews who wish to marry other than under or ultra-Orthodox auspices all benefit from your investment. And one day, the weddings in Washington might be weddings in Sydney. But what we stand for is more important. It's actually vital. We are implementing our Jewish values, drawing together the sparks of divinity to create a light and energy that shines through the world. We are shaping the future of Judaism, adding our own voice, our own thread to the unfolding history of our people. We take pride in the accomplishments of the Jewish state of Israel, but we struggle for Israel to live up to her founding ideals. And we seek an Israel that more fully reflects our Jewish values of pluralism and respect. In fact, I believe that in this synagogue, we support the most dynamic and exciting movements in the Jewish world today. And most importantly, we have here a guest who exemplifies standing up and fighting injustice wherever it is to be found. To keep succeeding, we do need your support, and we've received support from this community boundlessly over the years. I am hoping that for the first time we will actually exceed raising $1 million for the progressive movement in Israel, supporting the work that Orly has told you about tonight. If you haven't given before, please give generously. If you've given in the past, please consider giving a little more than you did in the past. And we invite everyone who is here tonight, whether it's $10 or $10,000, please support the work that Orly has told you all about this evening.